Getting into comics can be overwhelming. With hundreds of issues released every week from dozens of publishers, some printed, some digital, choosing where to start is daunting, and keeping up with multiple series adds up quickly in page count and price. So if you don't feel like spending money you'll never get back on books you might not even like, allow me to do some of the work for you. I buy roughly 20 to 30 comics every month, and I read more digitally, most of which being modern, current releases. I read books from multiple publishers, but primarily the big three in America that consist of Marvel, DC, and Image Comics. In this video, we'll talk about the books I read in January and February of this year, 2026, and whether or not I think you should read these comics. Here's how we'll structure this. We're going to break the comics I read into 5 umbrella groups: the fallout of One World Under Doom, the first 2 months of Ultimate Endgame, the Absolute Universe and the Wonder Bat crossover, the X-Men Shadows of Tomorrow league titles, and a roundup of the remaining titles that stand on their own feet a little more and don't play into many other books. In each section, we'll break down the strengths, weaknesses, and themes of each book so you can make your own informed decisions, and then I'll just tell you flat out whether I think it's worth it or not, purely based on my own opinion. Without any further preamble, let's get started. For more context on One World Under Doom, you can check out my last video where I go into detail about the various series and events taking place in 2025. In fact, you can watch that video for more info on anything you feel doesn't quite click in this one. Chances are I covered it in more depth over there. To quickly sum it up though, Dr. Doom acquires the powers of Sorcerer Supreme through a devious little trick, takes over the world by subjugating his people for their life force, and gives up his title and powers after accidentally killing the one person he cares about in order to bring her back to life. The Will of Doom acts as a thematic bridge between the fallout of Doom's reign and the building Armageddon conflict, centering around the power vacuum left in the wake of Doom's defeat. This one-shot takes place directly after One World Under Doom's final issue, with art by K-Fu and written by Chip Zdarsky, the writer in charge of the Armageddon event. If you're a fan of the Fantastic Four and Valeria Richards, you might enjoy this book and how it sets up their relevance to the geopolitical environment going forward, though to be honest, it might just annoy you that the FF series hasn't followed this up yet. If you don't care about the Fantastic Four though, you can probably skip this one and head straight to Dungeons of Doom. This follow-up miniseries places us on the ground in Latveria as the US military, Latvian freedom fighters, Hydra, and a deep state Wakandan agent infiltrate Doom's castle, all vying for control of the region. Doom is not one to relinquish power easily, however, even in death, and the warring factions will find this out the hard way. The first 2 issues do a good job setting the stage for the inevitable rise of a new tyrant in Latveria. The question is simply, who will it be? Even though it's pretty obvious. Being written by Benjamin Percy and Philip Kennedy Johnson, this book blends their respective talents for gritty militaristic action with brutal, gruesome body horror, creating a truly terrifying and tense environment to walk through, one that will surely shape whoever reaches the throne into the kind of brutal, cunning dictator Doom would want to take his place. This is the book I'd most recommend you read if you want to know how we get from the end of One World Under Doom to the start of Armageddon, and all around keep up with the general status quo of the main Marvel universe. The 3rd and final issue releases in March, hopefully after this video releases, so you can head to your local comic shop and pick up the whole run and binge it for $18? This is a $6 book. Okay, maybe you should read this one online, or you can buy the paperback for $16 when it comes out in October. Okay, just read this one digitally. Damn, Marvel. Doom's country and its fortunes aren't all that's up for grabs, as his death leaves the title of Sorcerer Supreme up in the air. Having heard distress from the Cloak of Levitation and the Eye of Agamotto, the Scarlet Witch takes the title for herself and must defend her position from several of her mystical foes and friends in Sorcerer Supreme. I think this is a great book to talk about how I choose what I buy weekly. When this series was first announced, Marvel released this promo image, which presents the idea that the title is a true toss-up that any number of magical and non-magically inclined Marvel heroes could be gunning for. And then the final issue, One World Under Doom, revealed that the Scarlet Witch had in fact found the vestments of the Sorcerer Supreme and claimed the title for herself. I missed this, I don't know how, but when I read this issue, I just didn't read the epilogue, or I completely forgot it. So when I'm looking through League of Comic Geeks in late November deciding what books to buy, I see Sorcerer Supreme #1 with Wanda on the cover, and I think, oh cool, I bet each issue will focus on one contender for the title, and it makes sense to start with her. And then I pick up the book on December 31st, and nope, it's not that. Wanda is already Sorcerer Supreme. So I could have decided to drop this book here after realizing there was no world in which Gambit was potentially the Sorcerer Supreme, but there's another factor in play I like to call my 3-issue rule. When starting a new run from issue 1 in weekly buying, I like to give each book 3 issues to grow on me and settle into its world before I decide to drop it. This is a flexible rule. I can always just decide on issue 1 or 2 to drop it if I'm really just hating the book, but I find that most series I've read that issue 3 tends to be where a book really grabs me, having had some time to lay down the exposition and start getting into its regular flow. So I decided to give Sorcerer Supreme 3 issues to see how I feel before I dropped it. Issue 1 is a strong start with great art from Bernard Chang, who captures Wanda's uncaged nature by constantly having her break through the panel borders, and all around draws Wanda very well. I mean, that's Mother, if I've ever seen her. Writer Steve Orlando frames the story through a diary of sorts that Wanda keeps as she begins her tenure as Sorcerer Supreme, a record of the threats she faces. Chang continues to use his composition to match Wanda's conflict, with the art becoming more contained as Wanda is attacked by Agatha Harkness and imprisoned in Limbo. This does have the effect of the pacing slowing down quite a bit, in combination with Orlando focusing in more on Wanda's relationships with Agatha and Chthon, and a brief meeting with her family in issue 3 that ends up making the stakes feel a little more trivial. These reasons influenced my decision to stop buying this book as it releases monthly, but that doesn't mean I won't read further issues. We're still in the first arc of this book, so focusing more heavily on Wanda's internal and external conflicts going to the role makes sense. And if you're a Wanda Maxima fan or someone that is more attuned to the mystical side of Marvel Comics, you'll get a lot more out of this book than I did. Alright, let's talk about Endgame. As the Ultimates reach the dome of the city in Latveria, they're trapped when the dome reactivates quickly after they start walking towards the city. After losing connection from the Ultimates and getting ambushed by some of the Maker's forces, they're saved by Death's Head, a freedom-fighting robot for hire working for Immortus, a senile Howard Stark, who tells them that the entire infrastructure of the city is the Maker. Immortus explains his battle with the Maker through the 200 years that pass under the dome, and how the Maker plans to use microplastic spores of himself to infect the world. All in all, Endgame is off to a pretty good start, though the core series feels somewhat anticlimactic so far, with the Maker only really showing up at the end of issue 2, and the dome continuing to be closed. The art is also not anything necessarily special or eye-catching, maybe with the exception of some of the Maker's grotesque forms, though Dennis Camp's writing is about as good as any other book, maybe a bit predictable here though. It's not been the most exhilarating monthly read, so you could definitely wait until this gets collected to just binge it all in one. While Tony's squad is trapped in the city, the other Ultimates are dealing with the Maker's forces across the globe. The Ultimates' final arc seems to be focused on defeating the remaining members of the Maker's Council and Hand. Issues 19 and 20 follow the Wasp and the Vision taking down Hand and Nick Fury from the inside and out, while issue 21 acts as the Ultimates Handbook, with Luke Cage and his defenders leading Ultimate revolutionaries against Emmanuel D. Costa. Camp continues to poignantly guide a dialogue about how to rebel against an unjust regime, much as every other issue of this series does. And if you like superhero books that make you think, you should definitely give this a try. Maybe not with these issues though. Go back and read the first 18, which are currently collected in 3 paperbacks. Now it's been said all over YouTube and beyond that Ultimate Spider-Man fell off a bit in its second half, but this finale issue concludes the story of Peter Parker coming to trust his family and accept their role in his new life as Spider-Man exceptionally well. If you like the idea of Peter Parker married to Mary Jane Watson with kids, fighting the Sinister Six led by Kingpin, with the help of Green Goblin Harry Osborn, you'll probably like this run. Another February finale, Ultimate X-Men arguably faltered a bit more in the way of closing the story. Issue 23 fills up the hidden gaps of the series and provides greater context to how the relationships we've seen form were destined, as well as the whole train of events the girls have been on. But issue 24 turns its attention to May and introduces more plot points than it really closes, between the mutant Yoru, the Stardust Pill, and Amanu's vague mention of Hisako's promise. Nevertheless, Peach Momoko's art in these 2 issues and the way she paces through time in issue 23 is as fantastic as ever. The way I've described this ending doesn't make it seem like I'd recommend it, but Ultimate X-Men was my favorite book of 2025, and I definitely think it's worth reading in full. These last 2 issues feel like more of an epilogue, with issue 22 being a bit more fitting as an ending. Both this series and Ultimate Spider-Man have their first 18 issues collected across 3 paperbacks, with the 4th being released in July. At $20 per book, that adds up to $80 for each series, so if I had to pick one up, I'd personally recommend Ultimate X-Men, but Ultimate Spider-Man is definitely going to be more familiar to a lot more people, so take that how you will. Moving on to the Absolute Universe. I've only been keeping up with 3 series right now, and 2 of them started the year with the crossover. In Absolute Wonder Woman issue 15, Diana enlists Batman's help in Gotham to solve a series of murders linked by the Mark of Hecate, the goddess of magic. Then, in Absolute Batman issue 16, Bruce summons Diana to enlist her help in shadowing his friend Waylon Jones, who had been turned into a crocodile-like monster by the Arkham Laboratory. The Wonder Woman issue has a Saturday morning cartoon feel, and you can easily be picked up by new readers and understood, while the Batman issue is more rooted in that series' ongoing character arcs and themes, as well as its grittier psychodrama. However, I'd recommend reading them together, as both issues do a great job building the bond between Bruce and Diana, who will certainly be the ones to unite the other heroes under one banner. Kelly Thompson and Scott Snyder also do a great job matching each other's characterizations very well, with neither of the two main characters feeling off in the books they cross into. After the nightmare that was Bane, learning the origin of the Joker and finding a centaur demigod to acquire the means to transform his friend back to his human form, Bruce finally gets a break at issue— just kidding, there are no breaks. Issue 17 of Absolute Batman starts with Poison Ivy taking over a building in Gotham after having broken out of Arkham. This issue keeps with the incredible action the series has become known for, while perfectly cutting in flashbacks to her origin story and Bruce's struggles with living out his daily life as things change around him in ways he isn't truly ready for. Guest artist Eric Canete also brings an amazing edge to this world, which is really saying something given just how edgy this world already is. This is a great action series. You could definitely start with this issue, and if you like it, you'll probably be eager to binge the rest of the series before it. The first 16 issues are currently available on DC Universe Infinite, DC's digital comic subscription service, with this issue set to release soon after this video. But you can gain access to nearly all DC Comics there for $12.99 a month, but if that sounds like a lot, you could also
finds a way.
While Batman is dealing with Poison Ivy, Absolute Wonder Woman issue 16 starts with the Season of the Witch arc, where Diana is faced with the Suicide Squad, led by Zatanna Zatara. This arc is ongoing, but between what we've seen so far from these issues and issue 15, I think we're going to start getting some concrete answers about Veronica Cale and her origin. Hayden Sherman should also get credit for how amazing his art and paneling is, and I particularly love the way he uses the title in his cover for issue 17. I'm just a sucker for when creators use their informative elements in creative ways. There's also the Absolute Wonder Woman 2026 annual, and I'll say right up front, if there's any one issue in this whole video you should read, it's this one. Beautiful writing from Thompson, gorgeous art from Mateo Diolis, and an amazing examination of the groundbreaking impact of Diana's compassion. If this issue doesn't make you love Absolute Wonder Woman, I don't know what will. Here's all you need to know. In issue 5, Diana takes the form of Medusa to stop a world-ending threat. Since then, she has been haunted by the experience and seeks to reverse Medusa's curse. Please go to your local comic book shop and hope they still have a copy. It'll be $6, incredibly well spent. Martian Manhunter's second arc begins with John separated from his family, living out of the rundown Starlight Motel. John is put on desk duty due to his weakening reputation and finds driving home that Middleton has become increasingly quiet and antisocial, dipped in the shame everyone feels after being truly seen through Martian vision. This arc continues the run's amazing examination of an increasingly antisocial society breaking under the weight of its sins, and adds to its analysis of the pressure of being seen, the consequences born from the shame that comes with it. How do we keep living and growing together when people have seen the darkest parts of ourselves? If that question and its answers intrigue you, or you have a love for graphic design and how it mingles with the surreal and psychedelic, this is the book for you. The first 6 issues are collected in one paperback or hardcover volume, so you can pick that up for $18 and catch up, or wait till the series wraps up with volume 2 sometime in August or September and binge it all then. But the bottom line is, everybody should read this someday. Okay, after the waking nightmare that took up a quarter of the year known as the Age of Revelation event, January saw the start of a newest era for the X-Men, The Shadows of Tomorrow. I have only been keeping up with 2 of these books, but they are the 2 flagship team books, so I'd argue they are the most important. I'll talk about all the solos in a separate video. Let's start with Jed MacKay's X-Men, since this is the book that most directly follows the story of Age of Revelation. Unfortunately for me, that means this book's first little arc is all about Age of Revelation. Issues 23 and 24 are quite literally the epilogue to Age of Revelation, with Scott's future consciousness phasing into present Scott's body to try to kill Doug Ramsey before he could start the Age of Revelation. And I guess he succeeds? He says he fails, but he kept Doug from joining the X-Men, and now he's basically out on his own. So that seems like it would have done the job? I don't know. You can skip these 2 issues unless you liked Age of Revelation for some reason, but going forward, I don't think I'll have to mention it ever again. Issue 25, however, sees the X-Men back at the status quo we've gotten used to since Krakoa, fighting groups that are causing problems for mutants around the world, specifically the Office of National Emergency, a government agency targeting mutants, and 3K, a group of evil mutants attempting to create the X-Virus from the Age of Revelation. God damn it, I'm gonna be so for real, you can skip this. Issue 26, which I'll talk about next month, is where X-Men really starts to get its footing back, but this little 3-issue transition period is just not it. Thank God for Gail Simone. Not only did she write a great little standalone speculative future arc with her favorite characters and Unbreakable X-Men during the event I'm Not Saying Again, once she got Uncanny X-Men back, she immediately got right back to all the best things about this book. Issue 22 brings back Mutina, a mutant slasher popularized by a sensational horror movie, to tangle with Wolverine and Nightcrawler on Kurt's birthday. Issue 23 starts the Where Monsters Dwell story arc. A year after taking the left eye of Agamotto from Saturang in Issue 1, the Dragon's prediction that the amulet would corrupt Gambit comes to pass, bringing Elsa Bloodstone and the Legion of Monsters to the Louisiana X-Men's door. This has been my favorite X-Men book since I started reading comics, and part of that is because I think it's the easiest to read. It also places a heavier emphasis on personal bonds, family, and prejudice in social settings, whereas McKay's X-Men stays closer to front-facing political struggles and covert operations. Again, you'll benefit from doing your research or binging the first couple of arcs, but you could start with issue 22 and get a good sense of what this book is all about. And now we've reached all the rest. Would you believe me if I told you this is the longest section? Shocker, right? For these series, I'm going to talk about them as a whole with every issue that has come out so far, since some of them started last year and I didn't really cover them much in the 2025 video. I'm going to talk about them here. Let's start with all the series that started in 2025. Matt Fraction's Batman feels like the definitive Batman story of the modern age, and it's only 7 issues in. It's nothing new. A lot of what this story is doing can be found in prior runs and adaptations, but there's an intentionality and precision to where, how, and why Fraction uses classic elements and plot threads we've seen before. The narrative centers around how the mental state of a person responds to a chaotic environment, how that dissonance can be manipulated or quelled, and the difficulties of working through it to build a better life. With gorgeous art from Jorge Jimenez that brings new life to Batman's decades of gadgets and suits, as well as the benefit of being one of the most well-recognized and understood characters, this book is arguably the easiest of the entire video to pick up and read. You likely already know everything you need to know in order to follow along, and even if you've never read or heard of Batman, Fraction structures his character introductions so well that you will learn what a character is all about within like 2 panels of them meeting Batman. Give this one a shot. The first volume is releasing June 2nd for $20, but you could also certainly find all 7 issues at your local comic shop for $5 each. Ghost Pepper is an indie comic series written and drawn by Ludo Lullaby, with colors from Adriano Lucas. A food truck driving chef named Laloy deals with threats from colossal robots and rival entrepreneurs, and meets a mysterious man who claims the world as it stands now is built on a lie. This book is heavily inspired by anime, and it wears it on its sleeve. I mean literally, the sleeve of the book compares it to Toradora and Trigon. It's a super fun book with great punchy art and a solid message about fighting tyranny. If you're an anime fan, try the first volume, which you can find for $17 at any bookstore or comic shop. Bug Wars! Guys, I fucking love Bug Wars. Pitched as Honey, I Shrunk the Kids meets Conan Barbarian, Bug Wars sees a kid from Alabama get shrunk down to the size of a bug in his family's yard and discover a vast society of insect tribes waging war against one another. I think in terms of world building and setting alone, this is probably the best book on the list. I love Ghost Pepper, but a lot of its actual world elements are kind of built on vibes, which is fine, but this is a book with a clear lore bible that we've only begun scratching the surface of. Each insect tribe has customs, culture, traditions that dictate how they grow and act, and our protagonist Slade is a perfect guide into this world as a young teenager learning about the world in his yard. At the same time, he's supposed to be learning about the ins and outs of the human world. The world is also brought to life through the perfectly styled art of Mahmoud Asrar, who highlights both the edge and disgusting depravity of this violent society, as well as the beauty and allure of discovering the world so much bigger than yourself, literally. Also, fair warning, this is 100% a more mature book than anything on this list, and I don't mean that in the way that, like, its story is the most nuanced and complex of all the books. I mean, this is very much about Game of Thrones, so there's a good bit of nudity in this book. Viewer discretion is advised, but that information was probably the nail in the coffin for some of you freaks to check this out. So, to each their own. Book 1 is out now for $17 at any bookstore, and the Spider Witch Special Epilogue one-shot can be found for $6 at your local comic shop. Bug Wars is returning with Book 2 later this year, so this is a great time to catch up and become a monthly reader. Oh, Nova, will you ever be allowed to stay in the limelight? Spun out of the events of Imperio, Nova Centurion sees Richard Rider back at the helm as Nova, cosmic hero for hire. Along the way, he'll meet... Guys, I'm gonna be so for real. There's no reason for me to write about this. Let me make it clear. I like Nova Centurion. I really do. Richard having to do increasingly dirty and immoral things in order to make the money to keep the Xandarian world mine online is a great concept that could have made for an all-timer ongoing series and definitive character study of Nova. The problem is that this is a one-arc book because it got cancelled. Because all of the Imperial books got cancelled. Because of the low sales of both Imperial and its spin-off books, Marvel shut down the whole Cosmic line, not even 4 fucking issues, into a single book. All 5 of these spin-offs were ordered as 10-issue series, and not a single one of them is gonna fulfill that. Black Panther got cut to 4 issues. Exiles isn't even gonna come out. And even if the whole Imperial push didn't get cancelled, I would have told you that Nova is probably the best book to come from the event. Like I said, I think the premise is fantastic and could have gone to such a great place for Nova as a character. But then while I was writing this video, Imperial Guardians released, and if you only read one of the Imperial spin-offs, it should be Imperial Guardians. I'll talk more about that next month, but as much as I've loved Nova Centuria, it is unfortunately forever going to remain a story with plans beyond what it ever got to accomplish, leaving it incomplete. So I cannot say you should read it unless you just love suffering. Is this how Gods fans feel? And finally, for the series that started in 2025, we have Wiccan, Witch's Road. I think this is also technically spinning out of Imperial, but to be honest, the Wiccan and Hulkling impact on Imperial was so minimal, it doesn't even read as such. Written by Wyatt Kennedy with art from Ante Pereira, Wiccan, Witch's Road follows Wiccan as he tries to get help for his husband Hulkling, who was seriously wounded during the Imperial War. This is another series that I personally liked, but its widespread appeal is quite limited. The series does a great job portraying Billy and Teddy's relationship and giving it the seriousness and care it should, but Billy's quest can feel somewhat ill-defined and meddling at times. For that reason, I wouldn't say you should read this book unless you're a die-hard Wiccan fan. We're finally at the series that started this year. Hooray! All 2 of them. Psy, Dimensional Rivals is the latest from Marvel creative Peach Momoko, fresh off the heels of Ultimate X-Men. The story sees Psy, Momoko's variant of Psylocke, traveling through the multiverse to find the fabled 7th Infinity Stone. This book is purely an artist showcase. Momoko has assembled a real who's who of talent to create the world Psy finds herself in. I'll definitely recommend this one because it really is just about the art. If you like seeing different kinds of art and want to sample the work of some of the best artists in the business right now, this is the one for you. And finally, DC Vertigo's Bleeding Hearts. This is the only book from Vertigo relaunch I've read so far, but I really can't imagine liking the others more than this. Written by Dennis Camp, who you should all be familiar with by now, Bleeding Hearts is set in the post-apocalyptic wasteland where zombies are now the dominant species. When our main character Poke's heart starts beating again, we begin a long journey to find the meaning of life in a world that's long been shaped by death. The first 2 issues are currently available at only $4 per issue. This is by far the best value in comics right now. Bring a $10 bill to your local comic shop and get in on what will surely be a book for the ages. And we're done! My god, can I fucking ramble. I don't know how long this video is going to be, but I know I've written more than I expected to, so if you made it this far, thanks for watching. If you're interested in any of the books I talked about today, they can all be found or ordered at your local comic shop, and many can be found at bookstores, or you can read them online through various subscriptions or other services. I'll be starting out the script for the March edition of this once I finish with this one, that way it can come out at a time frame at which people still remember March. So subscribe to make sure you don't miss it. Leave a comment letting me know what you think about any of these books if you've already read them, or if there are any books you think I should check out. Until next time, keep reading. Bye.